Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Zero Waste Festival 2020 Masterclass on Recycling Right. I wish to begin by acknowledging Ngunnawal people, traditional owners of the land in which we're broadcasting to you today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge the incredible contribution that Ngunnawal culture makes to this beautiful city and this incredible region. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Mia Swainson. I am the chair of Zero Waste Revolution. We're a very small volunteer-based community group here in Canberra, and our mission is to support our Canberra community to take the next step towards zero waste, wherever that might be. It might be about recycling, and today would be the masterclass for you, or it might be about getting the food scraps out of your bin to landfill, or it might also be that you have done all that and you're ready to take a buy nothing new challenge and really take the very last minuscule bits out of your small jar that goes to waste each week or each month. So we're there for you no matter where you're at in that journey. But I have to say, the more I talk about waste, the more people ask about recycling. So I'm really excited to be here today with Robbie Ladbrook. She is the, now to get her title right, leads the ACT No Waste Recycling Discovery Hub team. And she spent the last 4 years deep in the world of recycling and waste. But she's a former geologist, former teacher, and she also used to work at Questacon as an inquiry learning facilitator. I feel like Robbie will almost stop at nothing to inspire people to reduce their waste. Even at last year's Zero Waste Festival, she had the Queen of Green outfit on and made a splash in all the right ways and drew attention to to waste and just how important it was for people to be on that waste journey. So Robbie, I really, really appreciate that. Now, before we get into it, just a few housekeeping things for you to note. You'll notice this is actually, it's a masterclass, but it's a webinar. So for you to interact with us, you'll need to type your questions into the chat line. You can get that at the very bottom of the screen. The Q&A is the chat function. If someone's typed a question in there that you like, you can like that question and it'll make it closer to the top so we can answer the questions that people like the most first. We're recording, and so this will be available a little bit later on our website and through our Facebook. And I think that's about all. I'll introduce the session, and you'll notice we have both got headphones on, but you can only hear me at the moment because I'm plugged in. I will hand over to Robbie, and then and she will lead you through this session, and then I'll come back at the very end and just close us out. So in terms of this session, recycling right. So putting our bins out on bin night is just a small part of that complex story that is recycling. Sometimes it's what we don't put in our bins that is even more important. Find out what happens to recycling in Canberra today and the common mistakes people make, and learn some tips to help you get it right. Bring along your tricky questions, and I hope you've got them now, and be a waste-wise guru. Look, I'm always learning about recycling, and so I'm really looking forward to today's session, Robbie. So you won't see me, I'll be sort of just off to the side here, but I will be taking notes as we go along. So over to you, Robbie.
Thanks very much, Mia, and thank you everyone for joining us online today. I do hope that you can all be a guru before you finish the session today. I hope we can answer some of your questions and just illustrate why some things are important and why they are the way they are in the world of recycling. As Mia said, I have been buried in the world of recycling and waste for the past 4 years, and I find it truly fascinating. So I'm really happy to be able to share some of those understandings with you. It is a learning journey, and I'm always learning in this job, which is really great because I love working out the world around me and understanding how to really lessen my impact upon it. And I really do draw upon the traditional owners of our land and their perspectives that they've passed on, and that immense amount of knowledge they have around caring for country that I like to really engage with and learn from and implement as well. So recycling, and are we recycling right? Now, as I said in the blurb, putting something in the bin is only half the job, and it's what we don't put in the bin that is even more important than what goes in the bin. And that's all of our bins. We've been recycling in Canberra for 25 years, a long time. So why aren't we getting it right? Why is it so hard? I'd like to just start with you all having a little think and giving yourself a rating of 1 to 5 on the Recycling Guru scale. If you think you are the best in your house, I would rate yourself at a 4, or something like that. If you think you've pretty much got it nailed, you're staying on top of the ins and outs of recycling, you've updated your knowledge since you were in primary school, then you're probably going to be a 4 or a 5, which puts you in the guru status, which is pretty good. I'm imagining, because you're here finding out more about recycling, you're one of what I call our enthusiastic recyclers who already understand that it's important and that it's valuable that you do it right, and that you're probably one of those people that looks in the bin in your household to make sure everyone else is doing it right, and you're always telling them off when they've made a mistake. There's one of those people in every family, so welcome if you're one of those people. Why is it so hard for some people? And why is it hard in generally across Australia? We do find that contamination is an ongoing issue in our recycling bins. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is the fact that people don't update their knowledge very regularly, and it might have been when you were in primary school that you last did some learning around recycling. Another reason is that our packaging, which is what we get recycled through our yellow household recycling bins, is ever changing. So the packaging that our meat comes in and that our food comes in, it changes sort of every 6 months to a year. There's technological changes that are happening that have real value because they help us keep our food from going to waste. They preserve it for longer and they get it to us and refrigerate it easily, and they're transported in a light and efficient manner. All of those wonderful benefits from packaging innovation, I suppose, means that we also have complex and continuously changing packaging to deal with when we're trying to recycle it, which does make it a hugely complex and ever-changing landscape. So it's great that you're here today and we can find out some of those more tricky items. But I will share some screens today. I'll figure out how to do that if you'll bear with me. Yeah.
We actually will. Can I just use your headphones?
Yeah.
Look, we just want to apologise for that funny sound. So we're going to see if we can, while we're sharing the screen, we're going to see if we can just do a quick transition here. So just give us a moment and we. Oh, what happened there?
Oh. I pressed shared screen. Did I feel this way?
It's still live.
Still live? Okay, great.
Still live.
So let's jump on in. So can you make us sorry.
So maybe mute yourself. No. The holding screen.
Okay,
There you go.
welcome back everyone, and thank you for being patient. We're hoping that that sound quality is just a little bit better. Oh, fantastic. All right, now just pop this up here. I'm going to take that off there. So my apologies. Yeah, great. We're so proud of Robbie's work that we didn't want to not be able to hear it. Okay, no, just turn that whole thing off. Okay, excellent. Are you all there? All right, fantastic. Okay, so thank you so much for sticking with us, and seriously, my apologies for the technology there. We are going to crack on and get through it, and we really, really appreciate you bearing with us. Like I said, we're just a little group of Canberra-based volunteers, and we are doing our best to bring you this presentation. I might get Robbie to. Oh no, there we go. We are just about there. Are you recycling right? We're just opening her PowerPoint on a new computer and almost there. Could you type your questions into the chat line while we're doing this? And I should have asked you to do that earlier. That would be the way to go. So any specific questions, we would love to hear from you. Any tricky recycling items, Robbie is absolutely the person who can absolutely the person who can answer them. All right, now let's get cracking and I'll see if I can share my screen. Awesome. There we go. All right. Robbie, yes, we do. There we go. All right, on track. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mia, because I'm not the technology person. So that's really great that you've taken over and fixed that. I hope everyone can hear me all right. And let's just go, we've done that screen already. So where do you go to find out more information? Because you can't always grab me on the phone, obviously. You can go online to our website, to the Recyclopedia. And I'll tell you more about that in a little while. Now, the reason we have so much waste to deal with, and this is a zero waste festival, so I'll talk about waste, is that every single day we are buying and consuming resources. The ACT generates about 1 million tonnes of waste every year, and we recover approximately 72% of that. But there's good news in that the last sort of decade, we haven't increased our consumption too much. It's stayed relatively flat, which is fantastic. And our resource recovery rate has stayed up really high, around that 70+%. We would like to do more. So when you're buying things, obviously, they're coming from all around the world. They're coming in on big shipping containers. We buy them, we consume them, and there's usually packaging left at the end of it. So what happens when you throw something out in your bins in the ACT? You put it, or you send your kids downstairs in my case, and they put it into the bin, and then every fortnight or every week you wheel it out to the curb. Where does it go next? For most people, that's still quite a mystery. If you've driven past at Hume, you'll see the massive landfill there that's been there since the early 70s. And that's where our rubbish bin waste goes. And also near the Monaro Highway there at Hume is the materials recovery facility. That's where all your yellow bin recycling goes. So every fortnight we wheel that bin to the curb religiously. It's usually full. You can upsize your yellow recycling bin, by the way, and get a slightly larger one if you do find that you are producing a lot of recyclable packaging. And the truck comes around and it picks it up from the curb. Hopefully it can pick up your bin because it's not blocked by cars or trees or facing the wrong way. And they tip it into the back of the truck, and our lovely recycling truck drivers will actually, they have cameras on board so they can see if there's any contamination or anything dangerous that's gone in. They make their way around the suburbs. They usually collect about 600 bins on a run before the truck is full, and then the truck will take it all the way to the materials recovery facility. Now, the job of that materials recovery facility is purely to sort and separate the waste. They don't actually recycle it and remanufacture new products at that facility. It's just sorting and separating, because when we do throw it in the bin, of course, we throw it in all mixed and jumbled up. The machinery, the staff, there's some really funky scientific principles we use to separate all those different materials when they're at the materials recovery facility. And then it will either get crushed, so the glass gets crushed into glass sand, which gets used as a sand replacement in industrial and commercial purposes, such as concrete and road base. And then all of the other materials get baled up. So there's giant cubes that are out there that usually about a tonne of material at a time, say for the aluminium. And they are then, once they've baled into a certain amount, they get put on to the back of a truck and sent off to its next place where it is actually remanufactured. So our paper and cardboard, which is about half of everything that gets taken into our MRF, up to Tumut, where it gets reprocessed at the paper mill in Tumut. The steel and aluminium will get shipped off, and then that will get smelted down to be made into new steel and aluminium products. The glass, as I said, gets crushed on site into a glass sand, and then the plastic will get baled up into those different types of plastic and sent off and sold to other remanufacturers, both in Australia and overseas. But the whole system of recycling You've probably heard the saying that money makes the world go round. Well, money makes recycling go round as well, because it is an economical system. It has to be driven by economics. So the way in which recycling works is we actually have to buy recycled products when we're buying it back and creating that demand. So hopefully you're not feeling too confused. But please do put in the chat any of your trickiest items. I'm going to go through a few of those now. Everyone has one thing that they get and they're scratching their head. They're like, I don't know, does this belong in the recycling bin? And there are some pretty basic steps that you can go through in a decision tree to help you understand whether it should go in the recycling bin. Hopefully you can see that infographic there. But the first step you need to ask yourself is this household packaging? Is it a bottle, a container, paper or cardboard? If you didn't buy something inside it, it probably doesn't belong in your recycling bin. And for all of those things that don't belong in your recycling bin, we have this wonderful resource called the Recyclopedia online, where you can find out what you should do with it or what you can do with it. If it is a bottle or a container or some household packaging, your next question to ask yourself is it empty? If it's no, and it's starting to smell, then you need to wipe, rinse or scrape it out. So it really is important that it's empty. And that's because when a bottle is not empty or a container is not empty, it doesn't behave the way that the empty bottle does when it's being tumbled and rolled through our processing system. So a full bottle of Coke, for example, won't be able to be identified correctly by the machines. And then if it is identified, it won't be able to be moved about by the little jets of compressed air that push it around. So it's really important that it's empty and clean. If it is empty, then your next question is to ask yourself, what sort of packaging is it? Is it a can or foil? In which case, yep, recycle it in the yellow bin. Is it a bottle or a carton or a jar? Yep, you can recycle that in your recycling bin. Is it a rigid plastic packaging or container? Now, rigid plastic is a little bit of a tricky one, and plastics is probably our most confusing. If it's soft plastic and you can tie it in a knot, then it needs to be taken to the RedCycle soft plastics recycling. If it's friable, it's really hard plastic, but it's brittle and it breaks, then that also won't be any good if it goes through our recycling bins, because it'll break into small pieces and then just contaminate everything else. So you can think of plastic as being on a spectrum from really soft to really brittle, and the sweet spot for recycling is the ones in the middle. When it comes to paper or cardboard, you have to ask yourself, is it bigger than, say, a credit card or bigger than your fist? If it is, then you can pop it in the recycling bin. If it's not, then it needs to go into either the compost, into your garden, into the worm farm, or if you don't have any of those accessible, then into the rubbish bin, but don't put it into the recycling bin if it's too small. So that's your little decision tree that might help you out. I'll talk a little bit more about some of those other things now. So the Recycling Right campaign that we launched 1.5 years ago was all about helping people keep it simple. So as I said, everything has to fit under that umbrella of packaging. Did you buy something inside it? And that helps you eliminate some of those other tricky items that people often say they struggle with, such as coat hangers or shoes and washing baskets and plastic toys. It's like, well, it's not packaging, you didn't buy something inside it, so it's not designed to be recycled through this system. There are other options for most of those things, which is why we say go to the Recyclopedia. Keep out the soft plastics, because we've got somewhere else you have to take them to the supermarket collection points. Keep out small items, so items like drink bottle lids that are smaller than a credit card. You would have heard yesterday about the lids for kids. So because it's a different type of plastic to the plastic that the bottle's made of, and it's coloured, it makes it difficult to recycle together. We want the lids off our bottles. Well, we don't want them loose in the bin because it can't get collected by the machinery. So we have that separate collection points for items like lids. Keep it safe. That means nothing long, hazardous, stringy, dangerous, and electronics can be sometimes the culprit there. We do find people are looking at them and going, oh, it's metal and it's electronics, it's valuable. Some of that can be recycled, and they think that it can go in the recycling bin. Not household packaging, not designed to go through the recycling bin. So most electronics and e-waste, such as computers and televisions and mobile phones, can all be recycled, but not in the recycling bin. So they need to go to special places. if it goes through our machinery, it'll tangle up and jam it, and that causes safety issues for the staff. Keep it clean, as I mentioned before, wipe, scrape or rinse, and then keep it loose, which is a really important one, particularly in 2020, more so than in, say, 2010, when people were encouraged to put all plastics inside other plastics. We really want you to keep it loose because, for instance, if you put a plastic bottle inside your cereal box to save space, like my mother was doing, that plastic bottle will get recycled with the cereal box, and it will end up going to the paper plant because it's inside, and that's how it will get processed. So really keep them all loose, empty them out, don't wrap them in a plastic bag, because that will end up going to landfill or not going to the right end destination, as it were. And sorry, I've got so many computers here, I'm just trying to make sure I'm using the right one. In the ACT, we get it right 1 in 5 times, 1 in 10 times. And if we haven't done an audit for a little while, but when we do our curbside bin audits, it's really quite enlightening to see what those main contamination items are. And if you'll have a look in this one, as I said, about 37% is paper and cardboard in our household recycling bins. That's probably gone up a little bit with all of the e-commerce that's happening from COVID. Only about 2% is aluminium and steel, so that's your cans from baked beans and tin tomatoes and tuna cans, and then your Coke cans, which are the aluminium. About 1/3 is glass bottles and jars. Only glass bottles and jars. Again, if it's a different type of glass, it melts at a different temperature. It's not designed to be recycled through these systems, so only glass bottles and jars. About 8.5% are plastic containers, and this is measured by weight. So of course it might look in the volume when you look at it like there's more plastic than anything else. And that's because it's so wonderful and light, which makes it a great packaging product because you don't have to ship around heavy bottles around the country. But worryingly, about 20% of our household recycling bins in our last audit were showing contamination of some form. Now, some of that is actually the correct materials, but they've been packaged inside a plastic bag. And so that counts as contamination for us, even though it was all the right material inside. It will end up going to landfill because it's inside a plastic bag. Heavy items, soft plastics, food, or rubbish, long stringy items and hazardous items are some of those culprits in there. One of the main culprits for the hazardous items that we find in our household bins is actually batteries. And batteries are something that we use a lot of in our house, in our electronics and gadgets nowadays. Thank goodness they're going much more towards the reusable and rechargeable. If you do have small batteries, they can cause great hazards in flammable material like in a recycling bin. And when they come under pressure in the truck and get crushed, or they're going through the system, they could very easily start a fire. So we really encourage you, if you do have end-of-life batteries, to take them to a battery collection point such as Aldi, Officeworks, or the drop-off centres provided by the government. There's quite a few around town. Now, taking a little closer look at the recycling as an industry, it's not just about using your bins correctly, and recycling is actually a tool for helping you manage all of your waste effectively. There's a lot more that can be done in proactively managing our life to avoid some of that waste, and that can be in the circular economy style of things, where instead of buying things, we actually look to buy nothing new, we look to share resources, we look to work with our community, which are all those great things you've probably been hearing about through the festival in the last day or so. But when it comes to recycling itself, the key to a viable recycling industry is that it has to be financially viable. So for it to work, the materials need to be kept in their best value state. So that means clean, well sorted by their material types, and we need to have industry buying it back so that we're manufacturing with recycled content. We don't undertake a lot of manufacturing on a mass scale in Australia, so it is hard for us to manufacture using our own recycled material, but if we can get it to a high value, clean state that's ready to be remanufactured, then that's a really big win. That's what makes recycling make sense. We'll just take a quick look at the recycling symbols. one of the questions that we often get asked is which numbers? It's like, well, when it comes to plastic, that little triangle on the bottom with a number is actually not very useful. It's not a recycling symbol. It's purely a plastics code to tell us what type of plastic it's made from. And the plastic number 7 is actually, it just means we don't really know what type of plastic it's made from. It's a everything else category. So that's really something that we can't recycle in any meaningful way in Australia at present. Hopefully technology will help us in the future. But there are other sorts of labels that you might find on your packaging, particularly the Australasian recycling label, which there's a picture of there at the top. That's being rolled out Australia and New Zealand wide by all of our manufacturers. You'll see it on more and more of your packaging at Woolworths, at Aldi, at Coles, in all the major supermarkets. And it is designed to help you at your point that you're disposing of something. You'll have clear instructions on the packaging to tell you which bin to put it in. So there's the recycling, there's conditionally recyclable, which means it needs to be taken to a special return point, or there's the rubbish bin. And each item within that, whether it's a plastic bag and then a cardboard box, it'll tell you what to do with each item. So they're really encouraging us to check it before we chuck it. Now that label is really designed thinking about the packaging as a whole, because packaging, in order for something to be recycled, it has to be one, the right size. So if it's bigger than like a 4-litre ice cream container, it's probably too big to go through our curbside systems. It has to be the right shape, because our machines are sorting by shape and its dimensionality, whether it's 2D or 3D. It has to be the right weight. So if it's too heavy, it won't be able to be moved around through the system. The adhesives that they use to stick the labels on are not. So when the packaging designers are designing their packaging, they're thinking about what sort of adhesives to use, what sort of inks they use. So for plastics in particular, if you put colorants in, it's very difficult to remove it. And if you've ever tried to mix paint before and you mix a couple of different colors, you'll get up with a yucky brown, and nobody wants brown plastic. So keeping our inks and our colorants in our packaging is actually pretty critical to designing out waste and designing for recyclability. We're probably running out of time, are we? Yeah, cool. We talk about the waste hierarchy and about what we put in the bin is important, but we also think about the waste hierarchy as in the hierarchy of needs. So really considering, do you need this when you're buying it? Are you going to consume it, or is there going to be waste you're going to need to manage it at the end? Encouraging yourself to choose to reuse something, swap it, not shop it. Freetail, which is those buy nothing groups that help us to share things within our community, and really thinking about where our personal agency sits in the waste hierarchy. So if you'll have a look at that image, waste reduction and reuse really sits within a community and that's where your personal agency is. When it comes to recycling and resource recovery, that's really the industry that's driving that. And when it comes to disposal and treatment options, that's really where the government's setting policy to drive those changes and behaviours from and outcomes for our community. Now we've got a question that's come through here. When will we have a circular economy? Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's going to be a long journey. I think it's something that's going to be fast-tracked because of our need to value resources and reduce our impact. I think it's become quite an attractive concept for many governments and industries, as a way to not only reduce their waste and waste costs, but to reduce environmental impact and manage pollution and pollutants. So I think because it's gaining groundswell as an idea, as a concept, even though it's an economic principle, it's a concept that is driving a lot of great investment and innovation. I think it would be fantastic if people started to consider all of not only their waste, but their purchasing and their industry under those sort of same principles. I do encourage everyone, if they haven't yet been out to the Recycling Discovery Hub at Hume, we do have a fantastic facility there you can come and have a look at and see the facility in action, and talk to some of the other gurus in our team. And I also encourage you to get involved not only in other Zero Waste Festival activities this week, but also the Garage Sale Trail, which is one of our great reuse initiatives next weekend, which is something to look forward to as well. We have any other questions that have come through? No? That's fabulous. I have some tricky ones, tricky items that I've brought along to share with you that we often get asked. Medicine pills. Now, in most cases, these items are plastic and aluminium foil together, and they would have to go into the rubbish bin. If you've got ones like this where it's completely aluminium, once you've had your pills, you can actually put them in the recycling bin. Just scrunch them into a little ball. Yeah, let's answer some of those. Oh, we've got medicine strips. Yep, plastic and foil. So when you've got two complex material or two materials together, the machines can't separate those. So they have to either be separated by yourself, and sometimes that's impossible, and they'll have to go into the bin, or if you can only put them in the recycling if they're already separated. Coffee cups, the takeaway varieties, of which there are so many now. I was about to say there are thousands of different types, and they usually don't have any markings on them. Coffee cups ain't just coffee cups, as we like to say. There could be keep cups, there could be biodegradable cups. They're really quite complicated. The best option you can do is to use a reusable cup or a mug. In Canberra, if it's a predominantly cardboard coffee cup, we do accept those in with our cardboard recycling stream. The lids in most cases are what we call a brittle plastic, and so if you bend them, they'll snap. So we don't want those in our system at all. They should go in the rubbish bin, or you could just say no to the lids. What kind of metal can be put in the bin other than food cans? So in the recycling bin, we really only want food cans, steel cans and steel packaging items, and aluminium cans and aluminium foil, Easter egg foil, so long as it's scrunched in the ball. If you have foil that's flat, it's going to go through the system and end up where the paper is, because it's going to behave because it's light, just like paper. So that's why we say scrunch it into a ball. All other metals like coat hangers or car parts, they should be taken and dropped off to the metal recycling facility, which is free to drop off at either Mitchell or Mugger. What's the ACT doing to discourage disposable nappies and feminine hygiene projects? Thanks, Melina. That's a really great one. So we've actually just published our sanitary products fact sheets and sanitary nappies and incontinence products. We've done a little bit of research, really trying to provide information to the community about the options that they have and the various impacts from all of those options, so that they can make those decisions about how they're going to manage their impacts from using disposables, whether it's in your feminine hygiene products or with disposable nappies. And there's a great display here at the Canberra Environment Centre that you can come and see around modern cloth nappies as well.
And we've got a feminine hygiene.
Yes, and the No More Bloody Plastic Masterclass, which is definitely something you should attend. What plastics are recycled here and what are recycled overseas? Oh, that's a really tricky one. So we have good domestic demand for clean plastics in the form of HDPE, which is what our milk bottles are made of. And we have a milk bottle manufacturer that makes from recycled HDPE. And we have really good domestic demand for PET, which is what our, say, Mount Franklin water bottles are made from. And they are remanufacturing bottles made from recycled PET here in Australia as well. There is some demand for other types of coloured HDPE and coloured PET, but in Australia we import a lot of it, and we don't create enough and remanufacture enough to cope with just dealing with our own waste in that sense. So if we can make sure that it's clean and of a good standard, then that will have to get sold to wherever they're making the bottles at that point in the world. With the lids, either plastic or metal, should they go in the recycling bin? So a good question with the lids, if it's a large lid, so your metal lids from a jam jar, then they can go in loose. If it's small, we recommend you look up lids for kids and find out where you can take those ones. But definitely take your tops off your bottles. If they have food inside them, often because you've taken the lid off, the food will dribble out and make a mess of your bin. So make sure that it's clean first, or it'll dribble out and make a mess of the paper and cardboard, which really destroys the quality of that. So make sure that they don't have any food residue inside them. Some cities have quite advanced types of separation for recycling, with paper being different from bottles in different bins and different collections. Why do they do this and why do we not? That's a really good question. In Australia, about 20 years ago, evidence really suggested that people were not willing to separate into lots of different bins, and that one commingled bin, and then we would let the machinery at the MRF sort it out, was the way to go. Because of course our recycled product didn't need to be set to quite such a high standard at that point. However, the other issue is that in Australia we have vast distances and low population, and so our collection mechanisms, so driving trucks around to collect 6 different containers, is not perhaps the best way to go. So Australia has generally had a commingled system, but we do have separate paper and cardboard drop off, and for businesses that's usually the way it's done as well. 3 more questions. When a batch is contaminated, what happens to it? Oh, that's often one I hear about. Oh, you'll contaminate a whole load. It's very difficult to contaminate a whole load because it all just gets put into the one tipping floor at the facility. Really, it's only going to go to landfill if there's a fire on board the truck and they have to empty it out, or there's some hazardous sharps in there. Otherwise, it's going to go in, and it would just, if our contamination levels are high in the product that they're baling, the value that they sell it for is going to be lower, and it's going to make it less economically viable. So that's the outcome for that. Deodorant cans. So I would say spray cans, it's got to be empty. Spray is a-okay. If it's highly flammable, such as paint tins, make sure you take them to the hazardous waste off. And shampoo bottles, plastic ones, are they recyclable? As I said, most of them are. If they're squeezy tubes, they're probably a type that we're not, they're going to be not the right type of plastic, but most of them will have a recycling symbol on, such as your Pantene shampoo bottles, and the ARL is coming on those now as well. And mattresses can definitely be recycled. All mattresses in the ACT are recycled. They all go to soft landing. But there is a fee involved because it's an expensive service. They have to be hand cut, filleted like a fish to have the metals and all of the foam taken out. Now I've already answered that one, so that's good. I'm not sure about the volumes of the recycled glass sand currently being used in the ACT. It's being used in projects such as the roads. It's being used by Icon Water. The EPA have signed off on it as being used as a recovered glass sand as pipe bedding for their purposes, and we'll be using it in the upgrade of the facility out at Hume itself in the future as well. When will the ACT have organic recycling? That's a really great question, and we hope it will be soon. That was an election commitment, and it is something that we're working on and working towards. It's going to take time to get the right facilities and the right facility and the right location and the right mechanism to collect those. But of course, we already have the green waste organic recycling at the moment. Pizza boxes, eat your pizza, make sure it's empty. They can definitely go in our recycling bins. Disposable bamboo plates, that's a really great question. In the last year, we've seen a lot more of the pulp or biopack paper and cardboard products coming in. They don't have a lot of value in our recycling system. The fibres are too short to be recycled. We don't class them as a massive contaminant or a big issue, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. But compostables are designed to be composted in most cases, so make sure you are, if you're using them in a business sense, you're engaging a composting processor to take them for you. We don't need to be taking our labels or wrappers off the tins. Our system in Australia can take those. When they get smelted down, those sort of incinerate off anyway. Beer bottle lids. Yes, it's valuable metal and I hate wasting metal. If you are absolutely sure you know what sort of metal it is, you can put your metal and collect your metal lids and then take them to the metal drop off at Mugger or Mitchell. It's free. You can don't just do it once a year. That's what we do. envelopes with little windows in them. Our plastic contamination for those sort of little bits of plastic and sticky tape through our paper and cardboard system is really minuscule in the impact of the processing. So you don't need to worry about those. What we do worry about is polystyrene left inside boxes, or televisions left inside boxes, old televisions that people leave in the box, and then that gets into the paper processor and causes a lot of issues. Sometimes I can't take the lid off my cosmetic shampoo bottles. Is it okay to recycle? If it's got the same type of plastic and you're pretty sure about that, then you can put it in whole, but otherwise I would leave it out, because it's not of any value to anyone if the two different types of plastic are mixed together. Squeezy tubes like toothpaste, they don't go in your recycling bin, but there are options. So have a look on the Recyclopedia.
Wow, thank you, Robbie. And look, thank you so much for joining us today for this masterclass. I have learned so much. That was just incredible. I really appreciate you talking us through that journey for, each individual bit of packaging. And I love that message about keep it simple. What was that message in? Simple?
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it safe.
Keep it safe.
Keep it clean.
And keep it clean. Beautiful. Look, thank you so much for joining us. I do apologise for the technology. We did struggle a little bit on the sound, and then because of that, we struggled to find your questions. We only just found them towards the end. But look, really appreciated that. This is something we'd love to keep the conversation going on. And I think recycling is something that, touches everyone, because everyone has a, yellow litter bin at home. So please keep your questions coming. Feel free to get in touch with Robbie at the ACT No Waste team, or you can, check out the Recyclopedia. Every time you go to put something in your bin, ask that question, could it be recycled? And see if it is, simple, clean, and safe. All right. Look, thank you so much for joining us. It's 1:46, so we're going to sign out for today. In terms of what's coming up, we've got 3 more masterclasses in our 2020 Zero Waste Festival. Jump online, they're totally free. You can register anytime, and we would love to see you for those final 3 events for the festival. Thank you so much for coming.